It's the worst kept secret in football. The Declan Rice's future at West Ham's probably coming to an end. It looks very, very likely. This summer, it's going to be a painful one for us to take, absolutely. And, it doesn't have much you prepare for it. It's still going to be very hard to take. What it does, though, Riley, I think it creates a horrible air around the club that we can't keep our best players. I think that's the problem. Now, that might be a little bit harsh because Declan Rice is exceptionally good. He's a world-class player. And I think even if he was at the likes of a very bigger side than us slightly, you'd think they'd struggle because the big clubs are going to be circulating for him. But still, it does leave a bit of a taste that we're going back to being a selling club again. We're letting our best players go. We can't keep our captain. It's not good. For me, it's not a good look for West Ham to be losing your best player. Let's be honest. It's not a good advert for the club. I think what it highlights, though, is that we've got players at this club that we now need to keep massively. We need to respond to Declan Sal with the bigger players behind him to commit their futures. And one I think would be massive would be Jarrod Bowen. It wasn't long ago he was rumoured to be in line to go to Liverpool. Klopp was very much interested in him, blah, 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 blah. All these rumours flying around as they would when he was getting in the England squad. Let's be honest, he's probably not far away from the England squad again. He's playing pretty well. I'd like to imagine next season he'll kick on. My feeling is just my opinion, if I was West Ham, they've got to get a deal done this summer for Bowen. If Rice is going, that is a player we desperately need to tie down to a long-term deal. We don't want to be sending the message that we're selling players. First of all, mate, get your thoughts on Bowen. What's your feeling? Do you think he's now getting back to his best or back to his best? Do you see him getting back in the England squad?
Oh, 100%, mate. I mean, I think people forget how good Bowen is because of how good Rice is, simply. I mean, if Declan Rice wasn't at the club, Jarrod Bowen would be our star man. He'd be the guy that we were sitting there like, oh, we cannot lose Jarrod Bowen. All these big clubs circulating him, we can't lose him. And I think people just forget how good he is, because all our eyes are on Declan Rice, because he is just that world-class player. He's going to kick on and have an amazing career. But then you look down the pecking order and Jarrod Bowen, he's honestly not far off it. I mean, if you're going to group players into where they belong, you're looking at Rice, Champions League for me, dead on. He should be winning titles, doing all this stuff. Jarrod Bowen for me, I don't think he's far off Champions League. I think he's 1,000,000% a Europa League player. I would argue probably a Champions League player as well. Whether he's at that is probably a little bit debatable, but people forget how important and how good Jarrod Bowen is simply because of the Declan Rice debacle. And I completely agree with you. We go into next season potentially with European football. People forget as well that Conference League could absolutely save our season. Yes, it's a trophy that we haven't won in God knows how many years. It's our first final in 47 years, but the idea of winning Europa League football could honestly set us up for the next few years. You're looking at doing a bit of a rebuild if Rice leaves, and you're sitting there saying, well, look, we've got no European football. We've got Premier League, there's nothing to look forward to, or we've got another European campaign. There's another one in. We've got Bowen, who is dead set to stay. Paqueta, who we're going to build. I think Paqueta for me is the player we need to build the team around.
Absolutely.
Who are you what's the best midfield partner for you? Would you rather have a 6 that goes forward or just sits there and protects you and allows you to play the game you want to play? For me, Paqueta has to be the player we build around. Yeah. But also I'd be saying to Bowen, look, you're dead set as our right winger. No one's coming in to replace you. We want you as our star man, scoring all the goals, getting all the headlines. Rice has left. You're going to be the face of the club at the moment. Not the captain, of course. I think that should go to somebody else. But yeah, and especially if you're looking at price tags, I don't think he's that far off a 50 million, 60 million pound price tag that
absolutely
has managed to get. So for me, Jarrod Bowen has to get tied down in a long-term deal at West Ham. Whether that means we need to get a new manager in and say, look, this is the future of the club. We've got a new exciting manager in. We're building the team around Paqueta. We've got this amount of money. You're dead set to start European football. We're going in a good direction in the league. Why wouldn't you want to stay? And I'm thinking to myself, the only club that I could see him going to in the Premier League is probably Liverpool, with maybe being Salah's understudy. But he's going to start for West Ham week in and week out. I think he's a lot easier to tie down than Declan Rice. I would put him as one of the highest earners at the club, tie him down at the club for the future. It's so imperative that he stays. I mean, who could you even get in to replace Jarrod Bowen with his work rate, with how good he is on the ball. He's so confident on the ball. And also, I think in his core, he's a West Ham fan. He's a West Ham fan by trade, being at West Ham and obviously having his links to Danny Dyer and
Absolutely.
Danny Dyer. So for me, I think he absolutely has to stay. Tying him down is going to be such a big thing. And like you say, we don't want to become this selling club. You know, when Payet left, we didn't really fill the void of Payet, and we sort of stumbled around a few years trying to get the next best thing, trying to sell in Declan Rice and give it. And it's more of a give in, isn't it? It's not like we said, oh, 100 million, let's take that. We're not like, we haven't done what other clubs have done, like maybe Leicester, for instance. You know, they're a selling club. They do replace players well, but a price comes in for a player and they say, look, that's a good price, we're going to settle for that. It's more that we've been forced into the sale. And it hasn't happened yet. You know, he could stay in the summer, you never know, but
absolutely,
you know, we've been forced into the selling of Declan Rice. The price tag's gone up and up and up as he's shown his levels to the game. And let's be honest, he's never going to win a title at West Ham, and that's what he needs to go out and do. Whether that's Jarrod Bowen's aspirations, I think West Ham is a really good level for him. And tying him down is my number one thing for the summer.
Mate, I couldn't say it better, really. I think you're right. I think the difficulty with Rice is that his aspirations are to win the Premier League and to win the Champions League. West Ham simply are never going to be able to offer him that. And let's be honest, even if we were to get bought out tomorrow by some wealthy consortium or whatever that's going to pump billions into the club, we'd still be 10 years probably off from even challenging for that sort of level. So if that's Rice, that's the reason we can't keep Declan Rice. I do understand it. I don't like it. It doesn't sit well with me. I really wish he didn't feel that way, but it is the way he feels and we have to respect it. But with Jarrod Bowen, you're right. Bowen's not really in that bracket. Bowen is not a player that can come to West Ham and go, well, I'm a Premier League winning player. I want to go and win the Champions League. The reality is he probably knows deep down he's probably not that level. Don't get me wrong. He could probably do a job at Liverpool. A few player teams, he probably could go a step up from West Ham. Would he get in the City side? No, I don't think so. I'd say no. I'm confident he wouldn't. That's how I see it. So I think you're right. I think Bowen's realistic about it. I think he'd probably look at West Ham and think this is probably the biggest club I could get to. Maybe I've got one more step to go, but realistically, I'm probably. Does he want to go to Liverpool and be a bit part player? I don't think so. I don't think he'd want that. And let's be honest, you've touched on the reality of the situation is, mate. He's got children, he's got babies on the way with Danny Dyer, his missus. They're a massive West Ham family. Dave and X did an interview with Danny Dyer, her dad, and he was talking wonders about Bowen and how they're very, very close to the family. He goes around there every Friday for a Chinese, and they talk about West Ham. This is a good time to get him. I would say to him now, look, like you've said, Rice is now gone. We want to rebuild for the future. We want to look forward for the next 5 years. We want to be challenging for top four. We want you to be a big figure of that. And I just think it would send out the right message. I think it would show that West Ham aren't a selling club. Like you've said, we've been forced into this sale. Let's be honest, we've been forced into it through Declan. We don't want Declan to go. We've offered him 250 grand a week. He's offered £1 million a month to stay at West Ham. It's not as if we're not paying it. We're willing to match all the wages that he can get at Man City. But the fact is, we can't offer him what he really wants. And what he really wants is to lift the Premier League title. And let's be honest, we just can't ever offer him that. And that's the problem. Whereas I just think that we've got a much better case with Bowen. And I totally agree with you on Paqueta. I think he's immersing himself now as the player that we've signed, that he is showing his £50 million quality. Next season, the team has to be based around him. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that when we do sell Rice, also if we do sell Declan, then I would say to Paqueta, who do you want next to you? Is there any players out in the market that you generally go, I'd love him to be my partner in midfield? And that's how I'd build it around and say, we want to make the team comfortable around you because he is that good. But it's a big summer for contracts. I know that the interesting thing, X has stated previously that the club are sitting down with Bowen at the end of the season. But we've heard this a few times with Bowen now that they're going to sit down and they got delayed and they've had talks. They haven't really. It's almost like it's being kicked down the road. And I really hope that's not a sign that he's now sort of doing a Declan and going, well, I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to see how this pans out. Because the last thing we want to know, if we had another exit on our hands next summer of Bowen, that's showing the sign that West Ham really aren't pushing on as a club. We really need to push on, and I think it's massive. But do you know what, mate? I really think he will. I'm quite confident in Bowen staying. I think his family ties and the fact that, like we've just talked about, the fact that he's probably at the biggest club he's going to get to, realistically, probably in the Premier League. And let's be honest, why does he need to leave? You know what I mean? He's one of our main players. He got in the England squad at West Ham. What more do you want? I mean, who knows that, if he signs a deal and then he starts smashing 20 goals in a season, the likes of Arsenal's and City's might start sniffing around and saying, actually, we'd want him in our club, and then we've got a different scenario kicking on maybe. But let's be honest, that's not the case at the moment. I don't think the big clubs are really looking at Bowen at the moment. He hasn't had the best of seasons. He hasn't been bad, but he's certainly not the season he had last time around. So, it's a big moment for us this summer. Thoughts on then quickly on Declan then. I mean, I've got to ask you, do you think this is it then? Do you think this will be his last season with the club?
I mean, I honestly don't know. I think realistically, he didn't leave 2 years ago, and he probably should have left. We've been in a relegation scrap this season. He stayed on. My worry is, what's the perfect way to end your career at West Ham? Lifting the trophy as a captain next to Mark Noble. I mean, that would just be the perfect send off for him, wouldn't it? In my eyes, if I'm going to leave West Ham, and I'm thinking to myself, what's the best position to leave him in? 110 million in the bank or 92 million in the bank, and I've literally just given you, lifted your first trophy in 47 years. I just think it's such a good story that, for me, it gives me vibes of Eden Hazard, when he left Chelsea and he lifted that trophy for Chelsea, and he thought, do you know what? I've done everything I can at Chelsea. I want to go somewhere else. This is a great way to leave it. This is the fairy tale ending for me. I've gone from rags to riches of the academy. I've lifted a major European trophy. That's the end of this chapter, and I need to just go out and do something else. And to be honest, I kind of feel good about it. It would be lovely to see an ex-West Ham player go out and we talk about Lampard. This isn't a Lampard situation. Declan Rice has been through it with West Ham. He's played there loads of seasons. He's turned down big offers, big clubs. He's committed his future to West Ham. He's a West Ham captain, the understudy to Mark Noble. For him to go out and then win a Premier League title or a Champions League, I think that for me would give me so much pride as a West Ham fan that an academy player has been able to go through.
Depends where he goes, though, mate, doesn't it? It depends where he goes. I mean, I personally, I don't want to see him go to Arsenal. I really don't want to see him go to another London club. That's the only thing I wouldn't like. Go City for me. If he goes to Man City, I think it'd be a win-win for everyone.
Oh, 100%. And
I don't like the idea of him putting on another London club shirt and kissing the badge.
Yeah.
I really don't like that. But yeah,
I just think for Rice, I want to see him go out and live the career he wants to live. If I had a choice of Declan Rice in mediocrity at West Ham, I'm not being harsh there. I'm not saying we're a mediocre club, but for Declan Rice to have a couple of cameo appearances in the Europa League and win a Europa League trophy and maybe an FA Cup would be mediocre for his career for how good he is. I don't want to see him stuck at West Ham, and people might disagree with me on that and might say that I'm playing down the club or whatever, but Declan Rice deserves to be at one of the best clubs in the country. He deserves to be at a Real Madrid, a Bayern Munich, at a Man City, and I'd only feel like we're holding him back. I feel like this is the perfect time for him to leave. We're going to get a good sum of money for him. Potentially, lifting the trophy would be the perfect send-off for him. For me, I think summer is just the right time for him to leave, and and we're going to be in a rebuild anyway. Hopefully, like you say, if we lose a player like Bowen and we lose a player like Rice, it's going to be so tough to fill those shoes. But if all we've got to do is replace Declan Rice, who, to be honest, is irreplaceable. So let's just start off there. You can't replace him. So who do you want as your number 6? Who's going to be the next best player for you to be at the club? He's irreplaceable. There's no replacing him. He's going to leave at some point. This, to me, just feels like a good time to leave. We're not going to get a new contract out of him. So for me, getting that bit of summer money, fairy tale ending, I feel like this is the time for him to leave. And begrudgingly, I feel like he will feel that as well.
I do think you're right. There's a slight part of me hoping that he'll think, actually, do I need to depart right now? I think that's the bit that does me with the Rice thing. There's a part of me that feels that we could have kept him a bit longer. I think we could have.
What reason has he got to stay though? Realistically, what reason would he have to stay though? If he's getting off the Champions League,
it's not that. No, I don't think he'd say now. But I think we cocked up a few years ago. I think we had an opportunity about 2 years ago when we were challenging for top 4, when we were got into the Europa League. I think that was the time. I think if we'd invested that summer, that January, and really pushed and really got top 4, I think he'd have signed a new deal. I think the fact that we keep sitting back and dilly-dallying and David Sullivan doesn't spend money and does all that, I think that really infuriates him. And I think that's where his mind's been turned and going, well, this club is not really challenging, really. They don't really want top 4 that much. They're not going gung-ho for it. And he wants top 4. He wants to play in those tournaments. So that's what I think. Look, there's still a little part of me that hopes that we'll be able to do something with Rice. I don't think we will, but there's always that little part of me. But in terms of the Bowen situation, yeah, I mean, I genuinely think it's vital for the club. We've got to keep our best players. We're reluctantly going to have to lose our captain. That's going to be very painful. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a terrible thing in the long run. I don't. I appreciate Rice is an exceptionally brilliant footballer, and like you say, he's irreplaceable. You can't say, I'll go and find another Declan Rice. That's not going to happen. But what we could do is get a very, very good midfielder to come in to replace him, and a very, very good striker, and who knows, and a very good left back out of that summer, and go, do you know what? Next season, you'll go, West Ham are actually a better team for losing Rice. We're actually, as an all-round picture, you go, all right, you've lost your world-class midfielder, but you've got a bloody good midfielder in there. It's not as if we're going to lose Rice and then suddenly we've got to put a championship player in and go, oh, well, we look, it's vital we get it right. But in terms of what we want to send a message out to the club, I think we need to see a big player stay. There, I say it, mate. I'll be tempted to get a new deal for Paqueta as well. I know he's on a 5-year one, but I'd be tempted to say that we want to add another couple of years on it. Do you want to up your age to, I don't know what he's on. Let's just say he's on 120. I'd say, right, let's make it 170. Let's get him on. Let's get him to stay a bit longer. And it just sends out a lovely message to the club. Like, oh, fucking West Ham aren't messing us around here. They really want to, they want to push on. They're not just selling Rice and going, well, that's us done then. And we want to go back to being a sort of mid-table battling relegation side. We want to push on. That's how I feel. But yeah, big summer ahead, mate. Big summer. And let's hope that we can get Bowen to agree. Because apparently, according to X, they are sitting down with him at the end of the season. So who knows, maybe that'll be the news that we'll get that will soften the blow with Rice. Yeah,
and I think if we're willing to offer players like Danny Ings the sort of money that he's on, I think he is the top earner at the club. Why wouldn't we be willing to, maybe offload him in the books in the summer or get him in a lower deal and say, look, Bowen, what number do you want on the paper, mate?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's massively important. And you're right, mate. It's a big summer, and I think we'll get it right. But let's wait and see.